Hello. Been a while, but we're back. To quickly go over the preamble from last time, which has been, over a month ago? So, yeah. I was involved in the Spanish translation of Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War. The game that we got right here. If you're not familiar with me, hello, I am Brendan, the Shyster, as you may know me better, or you may just know me as the person who runs the Etymology of the Emblem blog on Tumblr. Because of my unique hobby, I found a niche on the translation team of Genealogy of the Holy War Spanish translation, to go through all of the names that have yet to be officially localized and update them where need be, or simply provide suggestions for alternative localization choices. Anywho, now that the translation project is complete, or at least has its current release, official public release, I am going to go through the game, hopefully at a faster pace than last stream, where I just got through the introductory text, and hopefully not with, one and a half long month breaks between parts. But just taking a trip through Yggdrasil again. I don't think I've actually played this game since 2020, I think. So just playing through the game again, and while I'm here, taking a look at all of these lovely, lovely names, and why characters are named the way that they are. Let me just make sure everything's going right. And I do believe probably the best place to start is all the way over here, actually. So we kind of skipped over her in the last video that we did. But here at Yngvi is Oh wait, can you not? Okay, it's X. Okay, you can. I just pressed all of the wrong buttons. We didn't really get a chance to talk about them last time. Simply because I was running low on time. But at Castle Ingvi, we have the knight Midir, who is the lord, who is a retainer to his lord, Lady Edain, who unfortunately we don't get a face for right now because she's in the castle that is about to get ransacked. So let's get back to what I do best, name shenanigans. So, Edain and Midir, as you may already suspect, are a pair. Even beyond how the game is kind of pushing the player to pair them together. The names Edain and Midir tie into the same narrative of Irish mythology. Because one of the most famous Irish tales is Tochmar Edain. I apologize to all Irish speakers. I will be terribly butchering your language, unfortunately. I know some elements of it, some of the pronunciations I'm familiar with. Not all of them. Most of us will be more favorable to an English name, The Wooing of Edain. Edain, or as we know her, Edain, and you'll also find spellings like Edain, which is what Project Naga used to use, or I suppose what Project Naga does use, because it hasn't been updated since 2017. But this classic Irish myth tells of this woman named Edain, or Edain, the prized daughter of the King of Ulster, Ailill. She's renowned as being one of the most beautiful women in Ireland, if not the most beautiful. And thus she catches the eye of many men. One such man is Midir. His name is typically spelled one of these ways. And for context, in the Japanese version of Genealogy, Midir, or sometimes called Midale, in the Japanese romanizations, has his name written as such. And Midir, the character in question that we are speaking about, has his name written as such. Just a very minor difference. In Genealogy, it's written Midir, and how Midir is typically transliterated into Japanese is Midir. Anywho, Midir is one of the Tuatha Danann, which is basically the primary pantheon of Irish mythology, and he is also the son of the Dagda, which, if you're a fan of Genealogy, a fan of Thracia, and even if you're a fan of Three Houses, you'll recognize this name. It's where Shamir's homeland gets its name. It's where the character Dagdar gets his name. A name that we see a lot in the series. So Midir is the son of the Dagda, who's one of the primary heads of the Tuatha Danann, or sometimes just truncated to the Tuatha. So, in the wooing of Edain, Midir gets in a bit of a scuffle, a bit of a conflict with his brother and foster son, there we go. His foster son, Angus, or Ongus, however you'll write it, who is the god of carnal desire, lust, love. One of Angus's children ends up taking out Midir's eyes, blinding him on accident. And while, being gods and all, they can easily go to Dian Kech, which is the healing god, and is able to restore Midir's eyesight. He's still very frustrated about this, and so he forces Angus to give him all sorts of compensation for his period of blindness. And one such demand that he makes is to have the hand of the most beautiful woman of Ireland. And Angus, being the god of love, is already aware of who is by far the most attractive woman in the land. It's Edain. As such, Angus jumps through all sorts of hurdles to satisfy the demands of King Aelil before he is able to hand over his daughter. And thus, Edain and Midir are happily married. Except, it turns out that Midir already had a wife. He was married to a woman named Midir had his first wife, Fuamnach, or Fuamnach, I think that's it. Again, I'm sorry to Irish speakers, I am much better at Japanese than I am Irish. Anyways, so obviously, Midir's former wife isn't very happy that Midir went off and married another woman. So, her, being a bit of a witch herself, uses magic to turn Edain into an insect. Most tellings will write that Edain became a fly, a scarlet or a purple fly. I've also seen versions that instead say that she becomes a mosquito. I've seen versions say different flying bugs. The point is she turns into a bug and is cast away by a powerful wind. And Edain is left wandering around more or less for centuries. And while she does find some periods that she reunites with Angus and meets some other characters, she's time and time again taken away by a wind conjured up by Flamnach. And eventually she lands into a glass of wine belonging to a queen of Ulster. And she is accidentally consumed by this queen, which in standard fairy tale fashion ends up making the queen pregnant with the reincarnation of Edain. And so eventually Edain grows up once more and is taken by the hand of the High King of Ireland, who is High King Oihu Iram. I believe that's how that's pronounced. And Edain is happily married with the High King. But slowly it turns that Midir, who has been searching high and low for his wife for the past however many centuries, learns of what became of Edain. He chases after Edain, and through various trickeries, he is able to retake his wife and escapes the king. And they live happily ever after, and all that jazz. And so some of these elements absolutely show through with Genealogy of the Holy War. We have a major aspect of Edain's character is that she is this beautiful woman that many men fawn over. Just in the game alone, we have Midir, of course, but also we have Midir down here, who's about to abduct her. We have Azelle, who is going to show up shortly, and then in chapter 1 we meet Jomka. And even beyond that, I'm fairly certain that in supplemental materials it's explained that Edain is someone who is constantly having suitors come after her. So it's very much that element of her character is carried over into the game. And in a similar sense, Midir, of course, has his romantic interest in his leash lady. And then after, sorry, my brain went out of my head for a moment. After Sigurd comes and restores Ingvi Castle, Midir will join in the fight to save Lady Edain. So much like Midir does in the original story, the character of Midir in Fire Emblem will chase after Edain to try and restore her to where she once was. I believe that's all there is to say about them. I will likely talk about Ingvi whenever we cease the castle, and we'll talk about Midir whenever we see him again in Chapter 1. Moving back over here to the castle itself, we have Sigurd's homeland of Chalphy. So, Chalphy is a very simple misromanization of this Japanese rendering of a Norse name. This would be read as Chalphy. Some versions may add a extended vowel for the vowel, where instead of it being Chalphy, it would be Chalphy. So that vowel is extended. This is the Norse name Chalphy, or as we may want to write it with more English familiar characters, with a TH instead of the thorn at the start of the name. So Chalphy, or Chalphy, in Norse mythology, is originally he is just a basic farm boy. He's just a ranch hand helping his parents on their farm. But one day, the two gods Thor and the god Loki visit their land and stay for the night. In exchange for this period of rest that they take at their home, Thor allows them to feed upon his, I believe it's 2 goats that he has. I could be mistaken in that. But he has goats that he is able to resurrect so long as their bones are kept full and pure. However, the somewhat gluttonous Chalphy ends up cleaning out the marrow of one of the goat's legs whenever he eats. And thus, whenever Thor revives the goat, it has a limp leg. And in his fury, he makes the young Chalphy, as well as his sister, Roskva, sorry, there's an umlaut, so it'd be Roskva. He makes them into his servants. That narrative, the best idea I really have for how it can tie into the narrative of Genealogy is that we find in the game that Chalphy, House Chalphy, between Byron and Sigurd, they are very loyal to the crown family of Belhalala, in contrast to other families like House Dozel or House Frege. It's Chalphy and Yngvi that are the two very steadfast in their loyalty to Osmore and to Prince Kurth. However, there's also another part of the stories that Thalfi appears in that seems likely to have influenced some elements of this game. In the same story that Thalfi first appears and is made a servant to Thor, Loki, and the two servants end up encountering a Jotun, a giant by the name of... Let me make sure I get this right. I forgot to put it in my notes. They meet a giant named Utgard Loki, who is different from Loki. It gets confusing, I know. Utgard Loki, also known as Skrimir, presents various trials for these four characters to go through. Actually, I think everyone except for Ruskva has to go through a trial, if I remember the tale correctly. And all of these trials seem basic and easy to accomplish on the surface, but end up being very deceptive, and all three of them end up losing. And as it turns out, it's because that they are all being deceived with illusions of some sort. For example, Thor is told to lift up a stone, if I remember correctly. But it turns out that it wasn't a stone. He was being forced to lift up the entirety of the world serpent Jormungandr, which is just an impossible task. Thus, Thor can't possibly accomplish it. For Thalfi, however, he is tasked with racing against someone called Hugi, which turns out to be the embodiment of thought and mind. And it could just be me reading into things too much, but it very much feels like this is meant to reflect how the character of Sigurd is very quick to rush into action, but not really think about the consequences. There's an entire conversation that he has with Lewin in chapter 2, about how he just jumps into conflict without considering what it will bring about for the everyman. So that is my consideration for why Chalphy was used for the name of Sigurd's house. That said, I could easily be mistaken. But now, how about we talk about the man himself? Sigurd is a very, very simple to understand name in all facets. But it's going to take a fairly lengthy explanation. In Norse mythology, Sigurd, or as he's called in Germanic forms of the tales, Siegfried, they are perhaps the most iconic heroes of Norse Germanic legend. They appear in all sorts of different interpretations, all sorts of different tales, whether it be the Nibelungenlied, the Volsunga Saga, the Poetic Edda, which is related to the same text that all of the classical myths of Norse mythology arise from. All in that, in other more recent texts, just a constant recurring figure of the culture. And for the most part, the stories of Sigurd or Siegfried go along fairly similar narratives. And because I'll be jumping around with a bunch of names going on here, because of course there's going to be your Germanic versions of the stories that use more Germanic styled names, and you have the Norse version having more Norse styled names. I will mention both names, like Sigurd and Siegfried, but I will primarily be using the Norse name to follow the name structure seen with Sigurd. So, typically you will find that Sigurd is a son born to a noble family, and his parents have since passed on. In Germanic versions of the stories, his parents will be named Siegmund and Sieglinde, which, as you'll likely be familiar with, these are the names of the weapons used by Erica and Ephraim in Sacred Stones. After Sigurd's parents pass, he basically becomes a wandering mercenary. Or less a mercenary, more of just a warrior. And he will take up a legendary sword. In Germanic versions, he will take the sword Balmung, which we will get to much later, while in the Norse versions of the tales, he wields a sword called Gram, which is gifted to him by more or less his father figure, who is named Reagan, which You may also recognize that name if you play Fire Emblem Heroes, because it's the name and inspiration behind the, I'm sorry, I don't know Heroes lore. The steampunk world is the girl from that chapter of Heroes. So Sigurd finds his legendary sword, he slays a dragon, and it's typically said that he consumes the dragon's heart or drinks some of its blood, which eats the heart or drinks blood, and almost always is said to bathe himself in the dragon's blood, which grants him impervious skin, except, because of course there has to be an except, no one can be impervious in these sorts of stories. He gets a small patch on his back that is left vulnerable, basically his Achilles heels. Afterwards, he returns to the Burgundian courts, and he takes the princess, typically in the Germanic version she will be named Kriemhild, while in the Norse version she's named Gudrun. Sigurd takes her for his wife, and then he helps his brother-in-law, who he is very good friends with. He helps him, Gunnar, to take the woman, Brunhild, for his wife. However, Brunhild is someone with very high standards, and basically requires that anyone who's to become her husband must be able to do impossible feats, run through walls of fire, slay horrific beasts, all that kind of stuff that, anyone can do, sure, yeah? I do it all the time. But since Gunnar is not nearly as capable as I am, obviously, he gets Sigurd to take care of these tasks for him. And so, through a bit of deception, Sigurd is able to help Gunnar become married. That said, over time, tensions will rise between Gudrun and Brunhild. And it will get to a point where Gudrun basically just reveals to the public that Sigurd took care of all of the tasks that Brunhild asked of. And understandably, she gets really mad at that. And there's suggestions that it was Sigurd that had slept with Brunhild, and that Brunhild's children may be, or at least Brunhild's child, her first child, may have been Sigurd's and not Gunnar's. And so, with this frustration in her heart, Brunhild convinces Gunnar to murder Sigurd. And already there, we see a lot of parallels to Sigurd's story in Genealogy. That he is this grand hero who is painted to be a bad person, despite how much he's done, how much he's helped, or at least, he's been a valuable asset to Granville, only to be betrayed at the end. And in case I didn't say it before, massive spoilers for Genealogy of the Holy War, but I feel like that was already implied. Anyways, speaking of massive spoilers that obviously no one knows about because the internet is a great place and doesn't spoil massive plot twists, and even Fire Emblem itself is very respectable and makes sure that no one knows about this massive spoiler. Yeah, Sigurd dies midway through the game, and he is killed by a fellow countryman, and someone that, well, he certainly isn't portrayed to be very close with, is suggested to be someone who holds deep respect for him. And this tragic fall of Sigurd is even further emphasized with additional elements that are found in Norse attestations of the legend of Sigurd. In those stories, shortly after Sigurd defeated the dragon that he slew, he saves a Valkyrie, which is a winged warrior woman that serves the god Odin in Norse mythology. And this Valkyrie is Brynhild, the same woman that Gunnar later marries. And shortly after Sigurd saves Brynhild, the two fall in love and they promise each other that they're to be wed. However, once Sigurd and Brynhild arrive at the court of Burgundia, the queen of the land gives Sigurd a potion that makes him forget all about his promises that he made to Brynhild, to manipulate him, so he instead marries the Princess Gudrun. And of course, we immediately see how this relates to Genealogy of the Holy War. In a bit of an inverse, instead it's Sigurd's wife, rather than him, that forgets her vows. Or, unfortunately for Deirdre, she forgets everything. And she is made to wed another man, and that man happens to be Arvis, the person who ends up killing Sigurd. Which is exactly how things play out in Norse mythology. Or in the legend of Sigurd, that Sigurd's close friend and ally, Gunnar, ends up betraying him. And Gunnar is married to the person that Sigurd was supposed to marry. So they mirror each other in how these stories are told. I believe that's all there is to say about Sigurd. At least that's everything in my notes. Which I guess means it's time to move on. Hello. Hi Zamosa, good to see you. Hey Dalen, thanks for making it. Alright. That's Sigurd done. Now... we got some more Irish mythology to talk about. Between Naoise, Alec, and Arden. You know, it's really funny that you say that, because I've actually been thinking a lot about a lot of the cultural elements in Fates this past week. I don't think I've seen anyone talk about this. Sorry for the aside right here. But let me see if I can pull it up. In Fates, whenever you use the dragon vein, they do that little animation where they show the dragon icon, and then the dragon vein effect procs. But in the background of that animation, they use a symbol. I think I can pull it up really quick. Okay, cool. 1 second, let me actually download this image. It's massive. Crap. We can fix this. It's fine. Okay. So, this is like the dragon vein symbol in Fates. You have the dragon icon that appears in the center, and then you have this octagon that appears around it. That's just a major element of, I believe it's called Bagua? Bagua? Which is part of Taoism. And Fates is already very focused on Chinese philosophy. With how, like, the entire map is just the most blatant yin-yang, with the bottomless chasm and Vala representing Wuji, which is the void in between the black and the white. And then the symbol of the Dragonbane is just the Bagua, which is, if I remember correctly, is supposed to be that. In Chinese practices, the 1 is nothing. The 2 below it is yin and yang. And then below that is the Bagua. Which then the Bagua represents 8 of like the basic elements. Where it's like a weird in-between of like the Wuji, the 5 basic elements of Chinese my brain defaults to wanting to say the basic elements of Chinese alchemy, but it's more than that. That's just what I've been trained to call it. Anyways, weird aside, I've been thinking about that a lot. I've kind of been wanting to make a video about that, but I also been working on the fire, water, earth, air, metal, wood. But the Bagua is, it drops metal and wood and adds mountain, swamp, heaven. I think that's it. Okay, nope. I need to just double check the Wikipedia. That's right. It's heaven, lake, fire, thunder, wind, water, mountain, and earth. Oh no, what happened? Okay, we're back. Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot. I've kind of wanted to do more research on that and make a video in regards to it, but I also know that I really want to make a video just on the Hoshiden classes and the elements of Japanese mythology they pull from, or even just Japanese history and culture. But on top of that, I also know that I'm long overdue to take care of that video that I was mentioning before, about how the Gabled is... how the Gabled is just kind of misunderstood, to my understanding, in Japanese culture. But that's for another day. Hopefully not too far away from now, but another day. Alright. So, we got Naoise, we got Alec, we got Arden. In Irish mythology, these are, well, I was gonna say they're major characters. Is more that one is major and the others are just kind of there. We'll talk a lot more in depth on the story that I'm about to talk about. This is just kind of be the spark notes, I guess. But in the story of Deirdre, the character that Sigurd's wife is named after, Um, Deirdre is raised isolated in the forest, and she asks her guardian if a man exists that matches a specific sight that she sees. If I remember correctly, is a man who has skin pale as the snow, cheeks red as the blood of a dead cow, and hair black as the raven that's eating off the cow. It's something like that. I don't know what she sees in that. Apparently she thought it was really attractive. Anyways, her guardian says, oh yeah, there's a guy like that. His name's Nisha, and he's one of the Knights of the Red Branch. See, that is exactly what makes me, at lack of a better word, obsess over Kaga's game so much. The gameplay itself, it can be kind of middling sometimes. I'm not the biggest fan of all of his works. But especially with Yggdrasil's, between Genealogy and Thracia, the amount of research that he actually did into Irish and Norse myth, and some Greek, and plenty of actual world history, and the way that he uses it all to inform his world and how he characterizes everyone, it's so fascinating to me, and I can just get lost in researching. I get lost researching about what he probably got lost researching about. So there's a amusing Ouroboros there, in a way. And yeah, most people, this goes over their head. There's a reason that most people thought, like, they read this and they say Noise, because in a sense, like, you just read the Japanese, it's Noise. So yeah, you're gonna read that as Noise, rather than read this, which most people will just look at it and say it's Naoise, like it rhymes with mouse or something. But it's Nisha, and it's a traditional Irish name. Okay, Zem, I feel like I know the direction you're going, but I'm just gonna keep tight-lipped for a little bit longer. Oh. that's not quite the direction I was thinking. Actually, I was going in the wrong direction anyways. My brain read Sol Luna Astra, but just filled in Sol Luna Aether, because I know that in itself is meant to reflect the union of opposites in alchemy, that the sun and the moon, gold and silver, unite to make the Philosopher's Stone, which is represented by the heavens. And then, of course, the effect of Aether is that it unifies the effect of Sol and Luna. That's what I was thinking. But no, I hadn't pieced that connection. I'll need to look into that. That's really interesting. You know, I knew that about the symbol of platinum. It definitely left my brain at some point. But I also know that the sun and the moon uniting is supposed to be some sort of alchemical symbol for a perfect union, which in of itself is meant to represent a sort of perfect creation, which in of itself is meant to represent anyways, let's get back to Naoise and his story over here. So, like I was saying a bit earlier, we have this warrior. Hey, no need to apologize. Stuff comes up, I get derailed because I focus on something longer than I should be. No, that's too matter-of-fact language. It's not like I have an itinerary here that I need to get everything done at a certain period. It's just here. We're just here having fun. I'm more than happy to get derailed a couple times. So, with Naoise, he's everything that Deirdre ever dreamed of, and in classic fairy tale fashion, they fall in love despite Deirdre being set aside in the middle of nowhere to be the perfect ideal wife of the King of Ulster, Conchobar. And so the two elope and run off to Alba, which is just another way of saying Scotland for us Americans. But coming alongside them are Naoise's two brothers, and they happen to be named Arden and Anle. And after a couple of years, Conchobar finally has his men able to track them down and ask in a friendly invitation for them to come back to Ulster. And after a bit of conflict between the family, they eventually agree. And for the most part, they know none the wiser. In truth, Conchobar fully intends to bring Naoise back, get rid of him, and then take Deirdre back as his wife. And once they make it back to their destination, reach back to Ulster, and Conchobar has all his spies able to determine that Deirdre never lost her beauty in all those years. He orders a raid on Naoise's home and has the brothers killed. And of course, we see a lot of this basic idea reflected in the narrative that happens with Sigurd in the first half of Genealogy of the Holy War, that Sigurd is marked as a traitor to the crown, betraying his homeland, and is forced to be on the run. And then is later pleasantly invited back to Valhalla, only for it to turn out to be a ruse and that he and his men are killed. Of course, there seems like there's a bit of an issue here with how the names are, because we have Naoise, whose name is written like I posted up above in chat, and that's more or less the standard way of rendering Naoise in Japanese. It's not quite phonetically accurate, otherwise we wouldn't have been calling him Noish for so long, but it's what's generally accepted. Similarly, Arden has his name written like this, Arden, which is Arden. Just here it suggests that it's written as Naoise's brother has it written, that there's two A's in the name, an A between the D and the N rather than an E. But then we get to Alec, which immediately seems off. In Japanese, is Alec, which just is the name Alec, which we definitely can piece together what reference is happening here, but you know, for the longest I was sort of just left scratching my head at why Alex is the only odd one out. Well, it turns out English, if I can spell right, has his name written like this, Andy. That's the same spelling as Henri, the legendary hero from Mars games, the original person to slay slay Medius with falchion. Yeah. So, not wanting to overlap with a major character from Arcanea was just that they said, make it completely different, and went with Alec instead. And I believe that's all that I have to say about the Knights of Chalphy. Which unfortunately means I actually have to play the video game for once. Almost mixed up my calves. And like I was doing last time, since this is a very new translation, I do want to make sure that I show it off rather than just skipping through all the text. Lots of people worked hard to make this happen. Can't believe Midir is dead. Whatever will we do? Here we have a couple new names between DiMaggio and Gerald. You may be more familiar calling him Gerard. But we'll talk about them whenever we get to fighting them proper. And Kimbaith will see properly in Chapter 1. You know, I don't know how they pronounce his name in Heroes. I don't think I've ever listened to any of Jomka's voice clips. I say Jomka because that's more or less what the Japanese rendering is. But I can't say I am familiar with Mongolian pronunciations well enough to know how it is supposed to say. Everyone's favorite combat theme from the game. You call him James Advent? That's pretty good. I used to be a Yamka person. And just like that, we have 2 new units. Which means, after playing the game, actually playing the game for like, what, 2 minutes? It's time for me to do nothing but yap again. Alright. First, let me... if I could let my brain actually figure out how to... Okay. It's been a while since I've seen these menus, and my Spanish, as the description suggests, is not good. And I pressed the wrong button. Save. Because I'm probably worse at this game than I remember. Anyways, new characters. Lex. I have to be completely transparent. I have no idea what this guy's name's supposed to be. Basically, everywhere I look, it's just... yes. His name is written... Oh no. Okay, sorry. You can't spell flex without Lex. Something tells me Lex does a lot of flex. So Lex's name is written like this in Japanese. Hidekusu. It's basically just Rex, which is Latin for king. And that's basically all people will say about the name. I genuinely don't know a single proper reasoning for why his name would be Lex or Rex. Maybe it relates to the Paragon skill, that he's elite, and what's a king if not elite? But that's all I can say about him. Everything else, you'll find me talking non-stop about Irish mythology, Norse culture, Greek mythology and history, the Roman Empire. Rex is Latin for king, that's all I can say. Anyways, moving on to a name that's actually interesting, Azelle. For starters, I really don't know what's going on with his We'll get to that, Samosa. We'll get to that. To start, I don't know what's going on with his localized name. The double L-E. The closest I found is, I think it's like a Polish surname or something. I could be mistaken on that. I don't actually have it in my notes. However, the Japanese name is written as so. Azelle. And I've seen all sorts of interpretations about this name. I just whacked my mic. I'm sorry about that. I really wish I could provide links. Let me actually see if I can drop links in the comments. I don't think I can. Whenever I tried to put links in my description, YouTube was like, no, we can't trust you enough to let you have links in your comments. Or let me test. Can I drop a link and not get yelled at? Okay, I think I can. Alright, sick. I'd put these in my description if I could. Unfortunately, I can't. These two websites are the main Japanese sources that I have used to analyze and compare my research on the names in this game. I certainly don't agree with all of them, all of their suggestions, but I think it's very much worth considering what they have written. the first link that I provided is literally a website that dates back to like 2004. And it is still being upheld on the internet, which is wild. Even though, like, every once in a while it'll just shut down. It happens. But these websites have all sorts of notes and interpretations of the names in Genealogy. I think the second also has some for Thracia, but not too many. I think it's just like Avel and maybe like Dagdar or something. So some very basic names, typically things that overlap with what's in Genealogy already. Anyways, so I will be going through a few of their suggestions or interpretations rather. But I'll wrap up with what I think is probably the most appropriate interpretation. One thing I see a lot is what Zimosa mentioned earlier, that the name is a contraction of Azelle. In apocryphal texts of Jewish belief, you will find that Azelle is suggested to be a name belonging to one of the fallen angels. That said, I really don't see much of a link to Azelle's character beyond it being that, oh, he's from a noble family, but, you know, he's an illegitimate child, that he's not pure nobility, I guess, or that you can interpret it that, you know, Azelle is from the evil house, you know, it's House Belthamur is where the antagonist of the game hails from. I don't buy into it that much. I could be missing something, but it's never been a very appealing interpretation to me. Another suggestion that I've seen a surprisingly high amount is that Azelle is a corruption of this name, Uzeru. This would be Uther. And if you're familiar at all with Arthurian legend, Uther Pendragon is the father of the legendary King Arthur. I see where this idea comes from. Azelle is very much pushed to be in a pairing with Teotihu, through which he would then become the father of Arthur, and the character from the second generation, who is believed to be named after King Arthur. But there really isn't much beyond that. it's not much of a match in characteristics from what I'm familiar of Arthurian legend. Uther isn't painted to be a very good person. Meanwhile, Azelle is suggested to be this rather meek but good-natured kid. I don't see much here. The last name I'll take a look at, which is what I personally subscribe to, is that Azelle's name is a minor corruption of this name, Ariru. This is the Irish name Aelil. Whenever we were talking about the wooing of Edain earlier, at the start of the stream, I talked about Edain being the daughter of King Aelil. But there's another Aelil in that story. After Edain is born a second time, and she becomes the wife of the High King, there's a period when High King Oihu goes away, and Edain is approached by the king's younger brother, whose name is Aelil. And Aelil reveals that he has become smitten with his brother's wife. And he tells Edain that his love for her is so great that he's literally dying, that his body is decaying because he loves her and can't have her. And in response, Edain agrees to visit with him 3 times out of the presence of the castle. But each time she goes to visit, she doesn't actually meet with Aelil. He's been magically put to sleep, and she instead meets, in his place, Midir in disguise. With Azelle being the one other character in the prologue that we meet who's just infatuated with Edain, and the other being Midir himself, to me this feels like the most obvious answer. And I even think there could be a possibility that at one point Azelle's name was just Ariru instead of Azeru. Because whenever you look at a Japanese keyboard, the character for Ri and the character for Ze are adjacent to each other. I think, and it's very much speculation on my point, but I think there's a real possibility that it could have just been, at one point, someone flubbed, pressed the wrong key, and they sort of just went with it. And with that, I believe that's everything. I want to say about Azelle. But I also think, and I hate to say this is where we're gonna end stream today. I know Zem, you just got back, but I think that's gonna be it. I didn't think I was gonna yap this much today. I genuinely thought that I was gonna actually get to at least Ingvi. Maybe actually make it to Evans. But I talked a lot and it's later than I thought it was. I'll definitely see about I'll definitely see about doing another stream tomorrow. I should be able to do that. We'll reach endgame in 25 streams. You're too generous. Make it 40. I mean, I'd love to have you around here for stream, but I definitely wouldn't want to be overbearing and, you know, send you a ping to be like, oh hey, I'm streaming, come watch me actually play the video game for once. Alright, if you say so. Also, I just realized this is definitely going to take a lot longer than I thought it would. Because once we get to chapter 1, we'll actually have to start going through arenas. And I made a lot of name changes in the arenas. Some for better, some that I'm not too fond of anymore. But we'll get to that another day, I suppose. Maybe tomorrow I'll start stream a bit earlier. Maybe we can do like 4 hours instead of 2. But yep, that's gonna be it for today. Thank you all for showing up. I appreciate having conversation. I'll see y'all around.